Great trip around the sun. That's a perfect intro to the cycle of life that we're all living, right? The cycle of the annual going around, the month going around, the days spinning, as he mentions. However, I do have one challenge with the song because I do believe that we have a lot of control, and yet we can still let go. This is the challenge and the opportunity for each of us every day. So, great song. And today, I'd like to talk about back to school. Why? Well, all of us were kids. And when we were kids, guess what happened when you were about 5 or 6 years old? You went to school, whether you liked it or not. You'd had a number of years where you got to have some flexibility in your time. You got to go out and play. You didn't have as much things to do, maybe some chores around the home, depends on your home. And then you went to school. First, maybe for just half a day, and then later for days on end, it seemed. And so every year when the summer was getting to be close to over, fall was in the air, except maybe in Prescott, where it's still quite warm. But I saw a tree turning just down the street from me, so it's already ahead of the game because it saw that the length of the day is declining. So when the fall colors start, it's time to go back to school. Now, back to school doesn't just impact kids, right? Because if you had kids, you were then a parent, and it impacted you. In some cases, we said, great. Back to school, finally, get them out of the house. What a mess. But it also meant shuttling them back and forth for soccer and ballet and all of the other activities that require some way to get from point A to point B when they weren't being well handled by their teachers and their school. So in Science of Mind as a whole, the theme for the month is the wings of love, and the turbulence of love is this week. And you say, well, what does turbulence have to do with back to school? Well, if any of you had kids or were a kid or maybe grandkids, there is a turbulent transition time where they go kicking and screaming from that freedom to the regiment of the institution. And I was going to have Jackson sing, "We don't want no education," but I'll just do it for him.
I can do it.
I know. But in Prescott, the elementary schools and high schools and middle schools have already started. They started several weeks ago. Holy smokes, they're getting a jump on it. At some point, there's going to be no summer left. But they get a fall break, and there's a mandated number of days, as you know, that you need to cover to be accredited as an educational institution, and they get paid per student per day. Days are important. Now, Embry-Riddle, where I teach across the street, we start on Monday. I had it all wrong. I thought we started on Wednesday. Luckily, I looked it up. But I don't teach on Monday, so I don't have to go back to school till Tuesday. But back to school is a love of learning tradition. And everyone from early age to today can relate to the fact that there's a reason for going to school. Any of you ever watched Saturday Night Live? There was Father Guido Sarduccio. So Guido Sarduccio, he says that I remember everything from a high school, from a college, only thing important is from a kindergarten. That's all. Just play nice. That's what he learned in kindergarten. All the rest is just, frosting on the cake. So our educational system that we use today, how many of you know who it dates back to in our history in the United States? Go ahead and shout it out if you know. One of our presidents, Hint, he's on one of the bills. Hint, very close, but another one, Thomas. Now, Thomas was a very astute fellow, having also been involved in the Declaration of Independence and some other things. But he thought education was important because at that time, the only people that could vote were people that were landed, educated, white, and male. Because no one else was educated. So at first, that's the people that needed to get educated, those people that didn't have property. And so they said, well, we need to have them learn how to read, preferably in multiple languages, Greek and Latin and English. We need them to be able to write, and he had great penmanship. So they didn't have Miss Kittle yet, but they learned how to write in script. And then he didn't want people to be arithmetically ignorant or illiterate. And so reading, writing, arithmetic, right? And so today, we're still working on trying to get people reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it's a little bit harder now because our kids come in wired for sound. And so they're already on the internet. They already can talk to anywhere in the globe. They can find out anything about anything in things about things that maybe we don't want them to find out. They find out for sure because those are the things that they're told, don't look there. So where do they look? Right where we don't want them to. So it's a practice of love and grace that we have to hold as we go back into this season of going back to school. So summer's drawing to a close for those millions of students and families, and going into the classroom where the experience is different. You know, and they're saying that why is it that we have a disparity in education between the genders? Well, if you've ever observed young children, you see a difference in their energy levels. And some people are willing to sit quietly, and some people are not so willing to sit quietly. And the teachers want quiet, sitting, obeying students, right? Otherwise, you're a troublemaker or probably ADHD or ADD or nefarious or one of these labels. But this cycle of going back predates even the United States. But then it was the church that was doing the education. So what's important about going back to school? Well, there's new beginnings, new things, and the unknown. How many of you had to change schools? Everyone changed schools because you went to elementary school and then you changed to middle school. Then you changed to high school. Then you may or may not have changed again a few times after that. And some people had the maybe unfortunate or grace to change schools even within by moving somewhere, starting in the middle. And it was a little bit unknown. Who's going to be at the school? Will I be able to make friends there? Will I stand out? Because kids, they're pretty cruel. They decide right away, which clique are you in? Who do you belong to? Are you the in crowd or the out crowd? So that's why some people say teaching middle school is the kind of prison for the teachers who don't get the younger kids or maybe the very older kids, like coming back to school kids who are actually there for a purpose. Any of you done adult education? If you do adult education, you choose to be there, right? Because you think, oh, this is going to be good for me. But this journey into the unknown of facing a new class or a new school, that's a great life lesson because you might need to get a new job or you might move to some new location. You might have to create new friends, new family. And sometimes we want to create a family of our choice rather than the family of our origin so that we can choose the people around us. So going to school was a way of learning about that. And it was time of challenge. I don't know about you. I had some challenges in school. I'll tell you more later, but my father was the principal in my elementary school. That was right there, a huge challenge. All the other kids thought, oh man, you've got it easy. They don't know my dad. So we can learn as part of this education, going back to school, at least that's the goal, right? Is to learn. But sometimes in school, we make mistakes. The teacher has all the red ink and wrong, 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 wrong. And you go, well, what's the right? Don't just tell me what's wrong, tell me what's right. So we learn from our mistakes or our failures. And Ernest Holmes says, the only real failure in life is the failure to try. So the only real failure is the failure to try, which brings us back to school. Keep trying until what it is that you're trying to accomplish becomes the truth of who you are. That means we've got to build resilience. Because if you fail, if you make it a story about yourself, then you're going to carry with you this thing, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not as smart as the other guys. I'm not as tall as the basketball players. I'm not as strong as the wrestlers. You can make up all these stories, but we have to be resilient or learn resiliency if we expect life to show up the way we want it, not the way our teachers or parents or someone else imagines it might be. Did any of you have a parent that said, oh, I think you will look really good in one of those doctor's uniforms, or a lawyer's hat, or who knows what it is, because they had an idea of what they might want, and so they imagined that you might want that too. But as kids, I could think of all the various things that I thought I wanted to do when I was a kid. I changed that practically every summer. Oh, that cowboy thing looks pretty good. I wore my boots today for that. Or, oh, those firefighters have a lot of fun. They get to turn on the big engine, woo, have a lot of fun. So all of these action-oriented careers, I thought, well, that's for me. But they kept on changing as I went along. So if we look out and we say, well, I'm not able to do that, we get doubts in our mind, right? We might say something negative to ourselves. So we have to find a way to move beyond those doubts to what it is that we want. So we can practice what we heard a little bit in meditation this morning about trying to say, what goal am I setting here for this school year? Rather than just allowing the teacher to say, and this year we're going to do arithmetic and fractions. I saw a great cartoon. It says, 4 out of 3 people have challenges with fractions. Yes, they do. Yeah, that's a big pie. So this process of learning and growing is not always as smooth and predictable as we see in the syllabus, if they give a syllabus. And the state requires a plan for your education. The student and the teacher are supposed to follow certain things, and they're supposed to have assessments and tests to decide, did you, in fact, achieve the goals of that grade and its coursework? This can be a challenge. In fact, it's a constant challenge of personal growth that brings us back to our life today. And Ernest, again, has some wisdom about this. He says, every challenge is an opportunity for growth and transformation. And in fact, I would argue that the ones that kind of bump up against you, that are like in your face kind of challenges, they are the place to get that true transformation. If everything's easy peasy, what kind of transformation is going to do? Nothing. You're going to say, I'm good at the way I am. I'm just going to hang. I don't need to know anything. I just look good. I have my tie on. So there's these honor society things, and I happen to be the president last year of the Phi Kappa Phi Honor Society. It is the only honor society that accepts people from every single degree program. Yes, really good. And so when I was at the University of Wyoming, I joined it way long ago. I never had any clue that many, many years, uncountable number of years later, that I would be president of the chapter of the Embry-Riddle Phi Kappa Phi and had to explain what it's about. The motto of Phi Kappa Phi is, let the love of learning rule humanity. Let the love of learning rule humanity. So if we are all loving to learn, then sort of like our story, we want the same thing for everyone everywhere if we think in terms of human growth. Not only my growth, but the growth of everyone around. So I think that's a great motto and a great idea to hold up. I find that it's difficult to market that to young people because they have so many things that they can join and be part of. Why would they want to join some honor society about lifelong learning? Heck, I want to know if I'm going to get through my calculus class this semester. But it's a great thing to think about because here in the United States, we are arguably, by some measure, falling behind in our education compared to some of the other nations who actually think of teachers at a higher level. And they pay them better too, because they think that the learning and the education of their citizens is an advantage competitively in the global world. So think about that as part of the transformation and growth, not only of ourselves, but of the world around us. So why do we go back to school anyway? Are you motivated to go back to school? Do you have a passion for education? I happen to. I've been in school all my life. Now, sometimes I wasn't in a regular school, but I always knew that this was school time when somebody came into my office. They said, do you mind if I close the door? You know, there's going to be something going on. That was learning and education in the career world, in the path, so to speak, on-the-job training. But now I'm working with students who were born after 9/11. So we can't talk about and expect them to understand the impact of that. We had just celebrated 80 years of Hiroshima. Not a great thought. A good friend of mine was a little girl then, and she is now living in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and I sent her a little note. She was 5 years old when the bomb went off there. They were lucky because they were in the shadow of a big building. But we bandy about this notion of nuclear arms as though it's something simple because we've forgotten the terrible power. Because 80 years is a long time for humans, especially in the United States where we think in terms of quarters, fiscal years, P&L, mostly P. For those that don't know, that's profit and loss. So we like to be in the P side of it. So as you look forward and you say, what is it that I want out of my back to school? Because it may not be literally back to school, but what's your passion? What do you want to do this fall? Have you set some goals like we talked about in the meditation this morning? And there's a social dynamic that goes beyond just the academic. You know, we send our kids to school not only to learn something, but also to learn to play nice with others, we hope, so that we don't get the call that says, little Johnny is down at the principal's office. That was always the best. Worst, I should say, the worst place to wind up. If I got sent to the principal's office, I got it at least twice. Once there and once when I got home. But when we look out and we think about limitations, we might say, well, I can't do this goal. I have this vision of what I want, but I can't do it. But Ernest again says the only limits in life are the ones we set for ourselves. So we set lots of limitations when we say, oh, I can't do that. That will take too much time. It might take some time. We had the Dalai Lama, and somebody asked him, well, how did you get to this spiritual place that you are? He says, well, I've been doing it all my life, since I was 2. And Michael Tilson Thomas was playing the piano behind him, and he said, Michael, how long have you been playing the piano? He says, since I was 3. So it took some time to become masters. And just like anything worthwhile, any goal, any vision, any mission, it takes time to achieve it. And it might not be a straight line. But guess what? We don't have to do it alone. Because there's support, just like in school. We have counselors and teachers and peers and hopefully friends and neighbors, and maybe our parents are supportive of education. Maybe. Not all parents are that good with education today. So this skill of asking for help is important. Any of you ever ask for help? I hope so. By the way, this is a plug for practitioners. If you want a prayer, if anything's going on in your life, or if you just want more of the great stuff that's happening already, come talk to a practitioner. We'll be glad to sit with you and know and affirm the best and highest for you right now, in whatever goal, whatever place that you want. That's part of the support that we do here at the Center for Spiritual Living. Another thing about going back to school is growing or stagnating. Now, I would argue that summer is not exactly stagnation. I enjoyed my summers. But I could forget some things over the summer. I might not be able to remember some of the things that they had in the spring when they come back and they said, as you'll recall from last spring. I'll go, oh, no, I don't recall from last spring. Please remind me. So same thing in life. We have to be reminded of where we are on our path. I don't know, I'm a list maker, so I have my today list, I have the week list, the month list, the year list. And every once in a while, I make it all the way around. After a couple of years, I get last year's list done, right? But at least I had an idea of what I was trying to do. And some of them I say, why did I ever think I'd do that? Gone. That's for someone else, not for me. Because Ernest said, you are never too old to set another goal or dream or make a new dream. Well, that's great. So we can do it now, and then tomorrow we'll get a step closer. And then a step closer, and then if we find out, no, that's not the right direction, don't worry, be happy. You can just change direction, set a new goal, and start moving in that direction. That's what I love about Science of Mind. It says I get to choose, because every thought I make is creative. And that by thinking, I get to create my own experiences. By thinking every thought, I get to change what I'm getting. Perfect. Now that's back to school. So Ernest also said, don't wait. Don't wait. Don't wait for success to come to you. Go out and create it. So what does success feel like, sound like, taste like for you? What does success feel like, sound like, taste like, embody it, think about it, feel it? You can have it. Just start moving toward it. So here's the little lesson. Imagine, envision into the unknown what it is that you want, that you call success. Don't listen to anyone else. That doesn't matter. Their success is irrelevant. What do you want? And then what is the leading edge of growth for me? And like I said, sometimes it's the one that's been kind of hitting at you. Grumble, grumble, grumble. Don't run away from it. Lean into it and ask that grumble, What is it asking me to become? What is it asking me to do so that I won't have that grumble? Sometimes that's the best clue. And finally, what might be holding you back? Is there any negative thought, anything that somebody said to you when you were in 3rd grade that says, "You'll never be an artist, I can tell"? That was my guy, because I was not so great at art. He showed and he did these things, and I said, how did he do that? Because, of course, he was an artist. I was not an artist, but I later found out that, don't worry, I can do it with AI. So, leading edge, go for what you want, and succeed by creating your success. Back to school. Don't wait. So let's take that into prayer. All around us, in the air we breathe, in the chairs that hold us, the heavens that allow the earth to revolve around the sun, all the good, all the beauty, all that we see, all that we taste and touch, and there's so much more that we can't even imagine. All that is God. Everywhere, every when, guiding, directing through each of us. So that means that God is right here in the chair with you, with me speaking. There is no place where it's not. So what I know is this back to school season is good and graced. It is an opportunity to succeed in a new direction, to write an entirely new chapter, heck, start a whole new book. At this time of life, growth is mine to have, success is mine, and I love it. I can feel it, I can taste it. So I take steps every day, and I know that steps, that direction is available when I get quiet and I ask, what is my highest purpose? What is my vision for this back to school season? And I listen. So I'm grateful for this teaching, and I'm grateful for this knowing. And I send these words into the action of love and law, knowing it is already done. And we can anchor it with, and so it is.